Welcome. We're just going to give it a couple minutes while people still trickle in. So grab some tea, refill your coffee. All right, we're a couple minutes after. So let's get started. So welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to our webinar. Hope this is informative and good for you today. Um, just some sort of logistics ahead of before we get started. So you can absolutely ask questions during the webinar. Everyone is muted, but please use the Q&A button or raise your hand, and Liz from Jax will help with any technical issues, answer any questions. We do have a Q&A at the end, so we will often, if we don't answer them in line, we will wait until the Q&A period, then we can go back and answer questions at that point. Um, so there are the buttons for raising your hand or typing in a question for the Q&A. Like I said, you won't see the other participants. Rest assured, there are hundreds of other people attending with you. And if you need to leave the webinar, that's the button. Have no fear, we will be recording this and be sending out the recording to folks afterwards. So if you need to hop off because you spilled your coffee, we understand. We'll send you a recording of the webinar. Uh, in terms of length, we got about 30 minutes, and then we'll hopefully have about 15 minutes for Q&A. So just a little bit about who is talking and about Jax. So I'm Sean Spear. I'm the VP of Solutions here at Jax Consulting. With me is Liz Thompson from Jax, who heads up our marketing team. If you have any technical issues, if you ask questions, Liz will be handling that in the background. And we have Wilson Platt, who's the product manager from Big Picture Learning, who will be giving most of the webinar. And just a little bit about Jax. We are a nonprofit higher education focused Salesforce partner. We like to say we are the number one Agentforce partner serving nonprofits and higher ed, and hopefully this webinar will illustrate that today. So without further ado, let's jump into the actual content. This is the agenda we have for today. So we're going to give an overview of kind of the landscape of where BPL sits, the types of solutions that are commonly seen in that space, why big picture learning is different, and then the challenges and opportunities that they saw, particularly, and then how we used AI to solve those challenges. We'll go over the timeline, and then Wilson is actually going to jump into a live demo of the product so you can see this stuff in action. And then we want to talk about what's the results been since we went live with them a few months ago, and then kind of decompose what the solution looks like technically a little bit more, and then talk about some of the conclusions that we have about implementing AI in this kind of context. So with that, I will turn it over to Wilson.
Awesome. Um, all right, y'all. I am so happy to be here. I'm gonna give you a quick background on stuff. First, the first BPL school, it's called the Met Providence, was founded in 1995. And at the time, and real quick, Sean, I think this may be an old version of the slide from yesterday. I don't know if you have a newer one, but at the time, it was pretty unique because we're in a really college for all focused landscape. Um, Big Picture Learning's first school, the Met Providence, was focused on internships 2 days a week for all students. That was the core of their learning at high school. Um, this, in 1999, was given a grant to kind of spread these ideas around the country. But it took years and years before you started to see an effect at large. Today, and in the 2010s and into the 2020s, we've started to see a shift from this college for all landscape to something a little more varied. You're starting to see different kinds of policy that allows for real world learning or work-based experiences to be credit bearing or paid as a part of a class at school, and even replace some standardized testing. In New York State, you can replace one of your Regents exams, which is like a exam you must pass to graduate, with a certain amount of hours and some other kind of check boxes of real world learning. There's also a variety of programs that are evolving from youth apprenticeships to career and technical education to sort of like community projects located within a business itself. And so this is blowing up. In some ways, it's blowing up because it's one of the few bipartisan educational initiatives that is agreed upon. And yet, demand still outpaces access, meaning Kids all across the board are really interested in having more relevant, more real world experiences that they think is going to prepare them for life after school. And still, there's only about 10 to 20% of students who can access this. And if you look at a lot of districts, they'll say, we have an internship program for our 4,000 high school students. It's 40 kids. So in some places, it's even smaller than 10 to 20%. And then lastly, especially in some communities where transportation is an issue or where there's not a high density of large corporations, people don't see it as possible, or they see it as much harder when that's not necessarily the truth. We can go to the next one, Sean.
Yeah.
Um, but because it's growing a lot, there are a variety of tools that have been popping up in the space over the last 5 years, and they really fall into two different buckets. The first one are these big box do-it-all tools that try to touch every part of post-secondary education that exists. So that means not only job, but that's also college, that's also trade school, that's also financial planning. And of course, schools want less platforms instead of more. So platforms adjust to try to lean into that, and they say, we do everything. Um, but they do few things well, and they particularly don't do real world learning well. On the other end of the spectrum, you have these really focused platforms that just focus on improving one specific component of the real world learning experience. The most common one you'll see is like digital time card stuff. So people go from having a paper timesheet to having a digital timesheet. Big Picture tries to be a little different. And that's in part because of our mission. We are also a nonprofit, just like Jax. And our vision is that all students live lives of their own design, supported by caring mentors and equitable opportunities. For us, this means a lot of things in terms of school, but a couple things in terms of real world learning. Number one, you can go to the next one, perfect.
Mhm.
We believe in order for it to be effective and impactful for a student's lifelong experience, it's got to be a true journey, meaning it can't just be one internship for 3 months your senior year of high school. Because so often what we find, and I'm going to date myself a little bit here, is when I first started working with students, half of the students I worked with wanted to work in CSI. CSI was a really popular TV show, and it made it look really cool. And then kids would go do an internship with something to do with CSI, and they would be like, "This is not nearly as cool as what I thought it was going to be like on the TV show." And I'm interested in being a vet or working with hair, the ways that our interests as humans and especially as teens go, it's not from A to 1A, it's from A to Z to J to B all over the place. And the more opportunities you get, the better. Within those opportunities, it also has a wide range of potential impact. If you go to an internship and you're mostly just observing, you do get something from that. If you're just mostly doing clerical stuff, you do get to feel like you are a part of a community. You get to see yourself as a real person within this sphere. You get used to being in these spaces. But there's so much more than that too. And we believe in staff supporting the students and then internship mentors to really level up the tasks and projects that kids are working on, aligned to their interests throughout that experience. And lastly, it's really important to us that this is accessible to all students, not either tracked, right? So it's like, oh, are you struggling in school? You should probably do this. Nor, hey, are you a high flyer? Then you get access to this, but really all students. And so to that end, we created this platform called Emblaze. This was to help the schools that we were coaching, consulting on our type of real world learning, but also all schools that hosted real world learning to have a higher quality experience for students. Created a mobile and a web app, and it did three main things. It had a dynamic database so that you could track all the partners that you have now, share them with students. Students could pick from them and request them and show interest in them. You could then manage those suggestions, requests, and placements. And then lastly, you could capture attendance and experience data with actual employer verification. So this is like kind of that time card piece plus a longitudinal grow your program and give students a little bit of agency piece. But over the 6 or 7 years that we were really kind of launched and live, there were a couple main challenges. Three I'll name today. The first one is that as tech changed, kids' fluency with keyword searches down. down, down. We got a lot more used to algorithms and to really smart searching. And kids didn't have to do the same things that maybe we did 10 or 15 years ago, where you had to be really good at keyword. So when kids searched for cats, if veterinary was in the system, it wasn't coming up. So students weren't finding the opportunities that their schools had made partnerships with in the database. And often, though, there was nothing in there. So it didn't matter if kids were typing cats or veterinary or animals or the correct keyword, their schools just didn't have an opportunity there. The last one, of course, is that even when students found an opportunity in their interest that their school had a partnership with, there was a lot of fields for educators to fill out. And students wanted as much information as they could get, but educators didn't always have the time or the information to get this all in there. You can see here, there's no title of this opportunity. It's called TBD. There is one sentence of a description. There is no information about who the mentor will be. And there's a couple pieces of details, like you go to this website, you go to this address. So it's better than nothing. But if you're a student and you're trying to decide at the age of 16 whether you want to go work with this company, there's not a lot to go on right now. So thought, okay, how do we improve the search and the quality of the information that is surfaced by the search for students? And is there a way we can leverage the growing kind of field of AI to improve this experience? We went through this here it looks like it's 2 years. It was about a year of development with another year on the back end of like searching for funding and getting there. So we applied for the Salesforce Accelerator. We were accepted, and then there was a while before the funds were dispersed. Then we went through a long design process, first prototyping, and then working with some other consultant firms to try to figure out what we wanted before actually working with Jax. And there were a couple interesting points along the way that I should name before I demo this. The first is we started by using this tool called PlayLab, which if you're in the education space, it's really cool. I encourage you to check it out. It's like Mad Libs for education AI tools. It makes it really easy to make AI-based chatbots that work in, I would say, like good enough in a way. So we went to a 2-day summit where we designed a prototype, and it was a chatbot based search for students. And it was really cool. It confirmed this is a good idea. Kids can type in, and AI can find opportunities that are related to their interests and show it to them. However, there were a lot of hallucinations. So if you said, I'm living in Nantucket, and I'm really interested in rocket science, it would say, great, here are 4 rocket science opportunities. And no matter what we did, it wouldn't necessarily always show you places that were in Nantucket, and it wouldn't necessarily show you real places. It would even come up with fake URLs, fake news stories, all these things we tried to use to get it to be real. It wasn't fully working. The second part was if we tried to incorporate real data with it, it didn't reliably I would say prioritize the real data versus the conceptual potential data. And the last part was, and this is the most important part, most high schools are not okay right now with students having a wide open ask anything chatbot. And it was really hard for us to consider just how much layering we'd have to do on top of this thing for a student not to be able to ask for help with their math homework, or ask about what to do with bullying, or all, like what about drugs, like all these different things. There's appropriateness, and then there's also just scope. And so we decided maybe we don't want a chatbot. We worked with this firm called Teaching Lab to try to outline a specific approach we would take to this improvement. And our thought at the time was AI stuff is new. We don't want to put an RFP out there and have 5 different firms come back to us, each of them advocating for the one thing that they know how to do. Instead, we wanted to do a bit of a landscape review, decide on an approach beforehand, and then try to tell 5 firms, hey, can you do this? Um, we outlined a number of different ideas, from semantic search to sort of like an LLM call that would expand searches to autonomous agents. And we nailed this sort of like, okay, we're going to use these set of materials and this set of process, and we're going to go in. But during that process, the teaching lab consultant we worked with, um, was kind of pedantically like, this is all a waste of time. You shouldn't be spending your money on us. You should just start working and start testing immediately. Um, and it was a real problem at the time because we had paid them a good amount of money and we were like, we need you to give us the thing you agreed to give us, and you're not giving it to us. And we'll come back to this later with Sean. But after working with Jax for 6 months, I'm a little chagrined to say he was so right. Like what we needed to do was have a vague sense of the approach we wanted to take and then do a lot of testing. And we could have gotten through that initial engagement with the teaching lab with 1/4 of the work that we ended up doing. But let me show you what we ended up with because this will give you a lot of context for how it actually works. So I'm going to share my screen. Ooh. Can folks see?
Mhm.
All right. So I'm logged in as a student in a fake school. And you can see we discovered through a bunch of student surveys that about 30% of students have no idea what to write or what they want to search for. You're 16 years old, somebody says, "What do you think about going into the community and doing an internship?" And you have interests, but you don't know if they apply here or what you should do. So we allowed students to both add their own custom interests, you can see here, or select from a pre-described list. You can see you can kind of like sort through a bunch of different titles and names. Put in cutting hair here, and you'll click continue. The first thing it's going to do is it is using a semantic search to compare the student's search term semantically, like relatedness, and keyword of the database of opportunities the school already has access to. So you can see the first couple of things that show up are one, an opportunity with very little information. This comes back a little bit to that first challenge you'll see before. And then two, an opportunity with a lot more information. I can click on any of these and read more about it. I can get directions. I can wish list it. I can share it with somebody else, or I can say, hey, I'm going to request to pursue this place. I'm really interested. I can also search for very specific companies or terms outside and just look at all of the database of opportunities my school has. And in addition to that second problem of not having opportunities, if I search for an interest that is not in my school's database of partners, we have leveraged a couple different tools to help that student go find companies in their locale that are real that they can still visualize as an internship. So I've searched for bakery, and this school is located in Sacramento, California, and so it's found close to that school. I think it's within like a 20 kilometers of that school in like a square bakeries align with that student's interest. And what it does then is it creates a potential internship posting. So using AI and using an agent, we are going to prompt what kind of description this bakery could have for students. So you can see here, like this is what students might do. They might be able to assist in preparing Italian style pizzas, gain experience in inventory management and cleanliness standards. This is to help students and educators visualize what a student might do so that then they can go to the company and propose some of these things and not just come out of the blue. We've also given potential projects so students can think about it. And all of it is aligned to real data, real organization names, real websites, real addresses. This is from a Google API. And then when we can find contact details from mentors, that also shows up through another API.
And all of that is orchestrated by an agent, right?
Exactly.
Wilson. Yeah.
It's organized, orchestrated by an agent with a couple different inputs, which we'll go
Yep.
through in a second. So through all that, we've tried to improve how students can find opportunities that do align with their interests that their educators have, how they can find opportunities that their educators don't have partnerships with, but are aligned to their interests, and how to improve the data that they see when they're looking at those interests. I'll stop and pass back to you, Sean.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I think you are actually
Oh
talking about
yeah,
this
I
one.
did want to close. So it's only been a couple months, but we've already seen some really cool results. We track students. I'll start with the end first, which is that we track every 2 weeks how students are feeling about their internships. And as of this time in the year, 90% of the thousands of internships that students are in are rated a 4 or a 5 every 2 weeks. So we're having a really high sort of satisfaction rate of student experiences, which to us is usually an indicator that you're finding places that you're interested in. To that end, we've seen a 30% increase in wish listed opportunities and a 75% increase in approved student suggested opportunities. That middle one is probably the one we're most excited about, which is students finding companies they're interested in, suggesting them to their teachers, their educators, and then that actually being approved into that school's data set. It's really exciting. So
Yeah.
far, so good, and we already have improvements planned.
Yeah. Awesome. So I wanted to, following that, I mean, amazing results. And I just wanted to follow up kind of doing a little bit of a deeper dive into sort of how we engaged with BPL and how we got to actually getting those results. So I would say that to Wilson's point, when they came to us, they sort of already had a framework and a sort of a scope for what they wanted to do. But we quickly realized that that scope wasn't necessarily accurate to what the final solution was going to be. And then I think also to Wilson's point, we realized very quickly that even where we sort of knew the general solution, we had to essentially iterate multiple different ways of doing it to see what was going to be the best way to do that. And so, just some examples on this. So, in the semantic search, there was this question of where to put the weighting. So, it still does a keyword search, but it also does a semantic search. And so, the question was, is do we weight the keywords more? Is that going to give us more accurate internship opportunities? Or are we actually weighting the semantic side of the equation more? And to get to the answer of that, we just had to try different versions, right? Um, Another one was a particularly interesting example where um, when you are returning results for different opportunities, you might have one internship opportunity where the description is 10 words long, and three of those words are related semantically. And you might have another internship where it's a 100-word description, and 10 of those words are matched semantically. And so the 10 words, 30% of them are actually matching. So in terms of percentage, it's actually a better match than the longer description one. But the longer description internship is probably more realistic and a better internship overall because we actually have better data on it. So initially we were like very heavily over indexing on lower quality internships that had a smaller description. So we didn't know this until we actually built these tools and started testing them. And so this is just a good example of where you just have to kind of build them and then iterate through them. Um, Another example is, Wilson has been talking about chatbot versus autonomous agents. And we really found that having autonomous agents that aren't just an open text field, they're just doing the thing that you tell them to do. And so, we have sort of multiple actions that our agents are doing. So one would be write a description of this internship, or what are some projects that a student could do at this internship? And when you have really uh, tightly controlled scope or context for the LLMs, they give much, much more accurate and better responses. And so it's really about chaining together several different actions to an LLM rather than just kind of having this open chatbot kind of experience. The other thing that we did is really explore different tools and APIs that the agents can leverage to do the thing that they need to do. So it's not just a question of um, having an agent do some sort of action. It's giving the agent tools in order to get the result that you want. And I think, Wilson, you had a good example with Google Maps, right? In terms of pricing and just the
Yeah, and I'll just on the pricing thing on back on the agents, I just also want to pass along if you're in the Salesforce ecosystem,
yeah.
the price of a credit for the AI chatbot is way higher than the price of the credits to answer these autonomous agent actions. So it's like not only is it easier to build, it's much, much cheaper.
And it's
And
also
then,
more, it's what do I want to say? You can predict the usage and the consumption
yes,
much more
way better.
accurately. It was, yeah,
Right. Because like you draw an actual line, yeah,
yeah.
of the user's journey. And yeah, Google Maps API is incredibly affordable. Cognism it was a little more expensive than Hunter.io, but it's one that we're pretty like feels pretty important to us. But in both cases, those were two things that we didn't have to build. Those are APIs that already existed that we could just tap right into this process already, which was really nice.
Yeah, and Hunter.io versus Cognizant is a good example of iteration too, where our team originally had the agent using Hunter.io, and the use for this is the the AI goes out to the web, uses a Google Maps API call to find semantically related um, organizations near the student, and then it uses Hunter.io to find contacts at that organization who would likely be in charge of the internship and returns their name, their contact info, that sort of thing. And when we originally plugged in Hunter.io, it wasn't actually returning the contact info that we wanted, right?
It
And
was really
so,
good at returning emails, but not names and titles.
yep,
Um, but that was too vague for our users. So
right. So then we pivoted, and now we're using Cognism to return that kind of data about the internships. So I just wanted to like at a high level, this is really three different tools, well, two different tools, three different ways in the Salesforce ecosystem that we implemented for this. So Data Cloud provides the semantic search capability. So this is now anytime a student searches in the search box, we're going to do a keyword search, but we're also going to do a semantic search and find opportunities that are semantically related. So this is that the student can type in cats and it's going to return things like vet tech or animal shelters or zoos. And then we actually have two different agents. So the first agent is what Wilson showed, which is if a student doesn't find internships or wants more that aren't in database, they can actually do a search and that agent goes out, uses Google Maps API, uses Cognism, and returns a whole set of possible internships that then the student can request. And then the third piece, and this is a second agent, is that staff, when they're looking at an opportunity inside of Salesforce, they can actually push a button and it will do a similar kind of out of database search of the organization and augment the description, the contact info, all of that about a particular opportunity. So now the in database internship opportunities are actually more descriptive and better, uh, just have better information for the students to actually search for in database searches. Um, and I did kind of want to break down, we've talked about this a little bit, but just kind of this agent that does that search for the students is a pretty cool, fairly complicated agent in terms of what it does. So again, if the student doesn't find the results they want, they initiate an out of database search. So the agent uses the Google Maps API. It searches semantically related terms in a geographic area near the student, and it creates new possible internship opportunities for organizations that are semantically related. And then for each of those opportunities, uses Cognism to find the person at that organization who is likely to be in charge of internships or the kind of internship that the student is interested in and appends their contact info to the possible internship opportunity. All right. So in terms of conclusions and of the things that we learned from this and the things that I would want to sort of socialize in our ecosystem is we really think building proof of concepts and iterating is absolutely crucial to this. To Wilson's point, their whole timeline on this was probably, I don't know, at least a year and a half from sort of conception to final. But things didn't really get moving until we started engaging with them and just actually building prototypes. And it wasn't until we built prototypes that we knew this is going to work, this isn't going to work. And a big also learning that comes out of prototyping is what is the actual consumption going to be for these tools? Like, how much are they going to be used? What is the pricing for these AI tools going to look like? And you don't actually even know that until you've actually built a proof of concept. The second point I think I'd make is just be flexible, be prepared to pivot. Wilson's team came to us with like a pretty detailed scope, but we kind of threw that out, within the first week and really pivoted towards, oh, let's try out these different tools, let's try out these different methods, and ended up landing on a really great solution. But a couple of those weren't even part of the original scope. The third point that I'll make is we're seeing as we do these projects that it's not like a one size or one tool does the whole thing. it ends up being really a combination of tools. So in this case, it's AI search, right? It's semantic search with Data Cloud. We're using LLMs to power Agentforce, right? To do those agentic outreach and using the APIs. We're obviously using those APIs. And then we're using other existing products like Cognizant. So this solution is really, it's 4 or 5 different pieces that are all pulled together using Agentforce and Data Cloud. And then finally, we're really finding that domain specific AI is often easier and quicker to build, as well as being more effective, especially if you combine it with other tools. And what I say is more effective than using like a chatbot LLM. Like we're finding these really domain specific autonomous agents that you combine with other tools to do a very specific job is the most effective solution when implementing AI. All right. Oh yeah, I do have actually one more, which is these lengthy design periods can be wasted time. I think Wilson's team has shown this. This has been our experience with some other customers as well. Um, it's definitely helpful to think through the use cases. But when you're talking about even governance or other issues, until you actually start building the tools, um, all that time can be wasted because you won't know what's actually necessary until you know the exact solution that you're going to build. And the only way to get to that is just to actually iterate and move through.
And I just want to jump in just to say, like, I think the big thing about that for me as a nonprofit that has contracted for a lot of other technical projects is that's the opposite of what's usually true. Like
Yeah.
usually, the more design time we put into it, the better the team that's delivering the work is able to stay on track. Like we're able to stay in budget, we are happier with the product. But it's so opposite for this kind of like new, I would say like new tech almost in a way.
Yeah. Like as we've been doing these projects, it's like the technology is so new. No one really knows the best way to implement these things. And they also, I will say that our experience has been the landscape is changing so quickly. Like, these LLMs and the ChatGPT kind of tools, they're really only about 3 years old. And the progress has been absolutely insane. And so often a capability that didn't exist 6 months ago will exist today. And that kind of changes how you approach the solution. Okay, so let's move to Q&A. There are some questions.
Yeah, there was one that I saw earlier that was asking how often companies previously not in partnership like actually respond positively. Um, and
Yeah,
that's a really great question. We find it's really different depending on what the ask is and who's doing the asking. So one of the reasons why we intentionally did not build a direct route between student finding company and like pinging said company is that we find that there is a much higher chance of them responding positively if you build up in your ask. So if a student calls a company or a person at a company and says, "Hey, I'm Wilson. I'm super into cats. Like, I love the look of your vet clinic, and I was hoping I could talk to you for 30 minutes about what your job is like." People almost always say yes to that. It's like, "Oh, a student interested in my work? Of course I'll talk to them." And then if they hit it off and the student says, "I was wondering if I could shadow you for a day," sort of like, "Yeah, sure." And then after that, if they hit it off again and if things seem good, it's an easier sell to then talk about an internship. Whereas if a student reaches out, or if an adult, God forbid, reaches out and they're like, "Hi, I'm from blah 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 high school. Would you like to intern a student?" Like that has a much lower success rate. So what we do is we give the school the contact information, and then once they've approved the student, then either the student or the educator can reach out to somebody, and we usually like encourage them to reach out at like a low stakes level, so to speak. Kind of build from there.
awesome. There's also a question about showing other students. Did you want to pull up
Yeah,
and
yeah,
show
I
that?
can show you what it looks like on our side. We have a section called like past experiences. And now I'm just re-pulling up that account. And students can look and see not only what students were there in the past, but what the outcome of their engagement was. So we generally divide it into like, hey, this expired. Like they were pursuing this, but it didn't turn out. They weren't able to actually make anything of this, or they completed the experience, and then they say like what the te who the teacher was and who the kid was as well.
Yes. And if there are any folks that want to see the back end of this, sort of the Salesforce side, let us know. We debated whether to show that, and Wilson's happy to kind of pull up what the back end looks like. Right. Other questions? Oh, would love to see the back end.
Yeah, request to see the back end.
See it. All
All
right.
right, you got it,
So I'm gonna
Stephanie.
go in here. Um, So you can see this is prompt builder. So this is like one component that we discussed with Sean. And you can see like prompt builder is, I gotta say, um, really, really intuitive. I'm really glad that the Jax team built the initial one, but then they were able to pass it over to us for us to do iteration on ourselves and then also into the future. So you can see there's this thing called generate potential projects. If I click on this, you can see sort of what the prompt is, but you can also then, and I'm going to go into these things, you can go into a preview mode where I type in like these pre-fields that we give the prompt to answer this question. And then you can change it. And as you change it, I'm going to click Save As, save a new version. Um, and I'm going to say version 4 is created. And then I add at the end, say happy birthday. And then you test it right away. And it like will show you the resolved prompt, the generated response, all this different stuff. So this is really cool. And then the other side that I was going to show you.
And you all are still tweaking the prompts, right? Like that's
Yeah,
something
yeah.
that,
I
yeah.
mean, we tweaked it the couple weeks after we met with you all, and then
Mhm.
we're kind of in the process of tweaking it again.
Yep.
I'm gonna not show my dirty laundry while I find the other one because I'm a little slow at that. Um,
Yeah, and this has also been our experience with these Agentforce projects is just constant prompt iteration throughout the project and then afterwards. And to your point, like clients have been capable of then tweaking the prompts on their own afterwards.
Yeah. So then this is like custom metadata types. So you can see here we have a semantic score modifier. And if we're in here and we want to manage or edit it, you can see, okay, like what the multiplier is on the right. So if there's a word that is semantically aligned to the student in this field, discount how much it impacts the score. But if it's in this field, increase how much it like impacts the score. So this is the kind of thing that we tweaked a lot with the Jax team, and may even continue to tweak throughout. Uh,
Right. And this was something that we pretty quickly realized we needed to build, right? Was
yeah,
basically custom metadata types so that the BPL team could sort of control that, visualize it really easily, and then just tweak those parameters as needed. So you're not just sort of hard coding these solutions in, you're really building a flexible solution that the team can continue to modify into the future. Um, there was a question around how, again, the autonomous agent is triggered. So there's two different agents. So the student facing one is basically, it's just triggered through another search. Like, Wilson, do you want to show that, the out of database search?
yeah, I'll share my screen.
And then
So,
there's a separate agent, which is the internal facing agent that staff can use. We could probably show that as well.
yeah, I'll show that one too. So
Yeah.
this is as soon as a student hits this button, discover new companies, it triggers that agent that Sean is saying, that is going through like that whole flow of like communicate with the Google Maps API, communicate with the Cognizant API, and then write these descriptions and fill out this information based on those APIs, etc.
Mhm. And can you show the example of the staff one?
Yeah, I'm just logging out of student and logging into staff. Uh,
You seem pretty quick at this.
yeah, coming in. It doesn't, everybody knows all platforms don't like if you're logged in as multiple kinds of users at the same time.
For sure.
So I'm going to share my screen real quick. And we used to have like a really long, exhaustive process for adding opportunities. Now it's pretty simple. Folks just put in the name of the organization, the person they're working with, email address, title, and then they can choose to either fill details manually or autofill. So I'll type in Jax Consulting and Sean Spear, oops, Sean at jax.com. You are the VP of Solutions
Nice.
and you work in technology. And this is going to be a conversation. So I can autofill this details or I can fill manual. I'm going to click fill manually just so you can see the process. If I clicked autofill, all the same things that you saw for student search would happen, right? It's like it's going to go talk to Google Maps API and find address and website for Jax Consulting. It's also going to use an LLM to write a description. Or I can go in on an individual field and I can say, hey, generate a description for me. So this works on both new opportunities or existing ones. If I'm trying to update my database and I have like a lame description, I can just pop in here, click generate. And again, it's going to run that same agent that Sean mentioned, but just one function of it, right? So it's just going to write that description that I can then edit.
Awesome. Good questions. Anything else? We're almost at time. Good timing.
Yes, thank you. I think that was it for, oh, I do see one more question coming in.
What was the form on your site built with? It's all custom Visualforce, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they're now like Lightning components
Yep.
and Apex. But yeah, it is a Salesforce community website.
Yep.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. That was wonderful.